Hi, I'm Dr. Sujit Kumar. Today we will take a class on injuries around the knee. We will discuss under fractures around knee, ligamentous injury, meniscal injury. Fracture includes supracondylar femur fracture, floating knee, fracture of patella, proximal tibia fracture. Femur fracture. These are usually due to high velocity accidents in younger patients and simple fall in older patients. Patient presents with pain, inability to bear weight upon the lower limb, deformity at the knee. Vascular status of limb should be carefully assessed in these fractures. Type of wound around the knee should be assessed according to the Gustello-Anderson classification. Gustello-Anderson classification includes type 1, 2, 3. It includes parameters like wound size, soft tissue damage and contamination, combination of fracture, periosteal stripping, soft tissue coverage, neurovascular injury. Type 1 includes a wound size less than 1 centimeter and soft tissue contamination will be minimal. Rest of the things, periosteal stripping, soft tissue coverage, neurovascular injury will be normal. That's no periosteal stripping coverage will be there, no neurovascular injury. Type 2 is severe than type 1 but less severe than type 3. Type 2, the wound size will be in between 1 to 10 centimeter. Contamination and combination of fracture will be moderate, and rest of the three things will be similar to that of the type 1. Type 3A and type 3B, type 3C will all be similar in these three columns: wound size and the contamination, combination of the fracture and periosteal stripping. All will be similar. It will be more than 10 centimeters, severe and contamination, severe combination of fracture, and periosteal stripping will be present. These three will differ in these two columns. Soft tissue coverage will be present in type 3A and neurovascularity will be intact. In type 3B, there will be no soft tissue coverage. Type 3C, there will be neurovascular injury. Deformity in the supracondylar femur fracture are due to these three muscles. Quadriceps pull results in shortening of the limb. Adductor pull causes the varus deformity at the fracture site. Gastrocnemius pull results in recurvatum at the fracture site. Radiological evaluation for supracondylar fracture of femur includes X-ray of knee, AP lateral to see for the intra-articular extension. Better it can be evaluated with the CT scan to see for the congruity of the articular surfaces. Supracondylar femur fracture AO classification includes type A, extra-articular, type B, partial articular, type C, complete articular. Among type A, A1 is simple two-part. A fracture line runs in metaphysis, doesn't include the articular surfaces, will be classified as two-part. A2 will be three-part with a wedge metaphysis. It results in three fragments but doesn't include the articular surface. A3 will be comminuted metaphyseal shaft. Type B, partial articular, includes B1. B1 sagittal plane fractures of lateral condyle. B2 will be a sagittal fracture including the medial condyle. B3 will be the Hoffa's fracture. It includes the coronal plane. Type C, complete articular. It may be the T or Y shaped articular fractures involving the articular surface of the femur. C2, simple articular fracture with comminuted metaphyseal fracture. Metaphysis will be comminuted but there will be a simple articular fracture involving the articular surface. Type 3, that is C3, combination will be present both in metaphysis and the articular surface. This will be A, extra-articular, B, partial articular, C, complete articular. Coming to treatment aspect of the supracondylar femur fracture, type A fractures can be treated by Open reduction internal fixation with DCS. DCS is a fixed angle device, allows correction in both flexion extension plane, easier to use. Another option for treating type A fractures will be angle blade plate, which offers great resistance to bending and torsion forces, preserves bone during surgery, technically demanding. Extra-articular type A fractures can be treated by retrograde intramedullary nail fixation. Treatment for type B fractures, Hoffa's fracture, are fixed with the screw in the anterior posterior plane. Hoffa's fractures are a coronal split in a posterior femoral condyle. So, no dynamic condylar screw or a blade plate can be used among the type B fracture. Here, this is a coronal split. AP screw will run from anterior to posterior, but this dynamic condylar screw and blade plate cannot be fixed for a coronal split. Type C supracondylar femur fracture, that includes comminuted articular fractures, can be treated with the distal femoral locking compression plate, which offers both relative and absolute stability. Lastly, knee spanning external fixator can be used for a supracondylar femur fracture. These are used for temporary stabilization in an open fracture that includes type 3B, type 3C, patients who are not stable enough to withstand definitive fixation immediately. Second type of fractures include floating knee. Fraser classified floating knee into 1 includes both fractures involving the shaft without the articular involvement of the knee. Both shaft means shaft of femur and shaft of tibia. Type 2, articular involvement of the knee. In that, type 2A, femoral shaft fracture and tibial plateau fracture. Type 2B, fracture of distal femur and the shaft of tibia. Type 2C, fracture of distal femur and tibial plateau. Treatment of the floating knee. After resuscitation, floating knee will be stabilized by knee spanning external fixator. During internal fixation, femoral shaft fractures are addressed first, followed by the tibia. Complications include delayed union, non-union. Fractures of patella. Patella is largest sesamoid bone located within extensor apparatus of knee. Patellofemoral joint is heavily loaded joint in body. Any compromise of joint surface is likely to lead to degenerative joint disease. Therefore, anatomical reduction of joint surface, stable fixation is desirable in patellar fracture fixation. Classification will be descriptive, that includes undisplaced fracture, transverse displaced fracture, lower pole or upper pole fracture, multifragmented undisplaced fracture, multifragmented displaced vertical osteochondral fractures. Treatment options for patellar fracture: non-operative, immobilized in cylinder cast from groin to ankle when displacement is minimal and extensor mechanism is intact. Internal fixation done with tension band wiring TBW provides rigid fixation and permits early mobilization of the knee. X-ray A shows TBW with 2K wires and figure of 8. X-ray B shows TBW with additional N-circlage wire. X-ray C shows TBW with CC screw instead of K wires and figure of 8. Tension band wiring principle can be explained by using this schematic diagram. I-beam are connected by two springs. There are two pulleys on the left side. When central axial loading is applied using a weight, on either side there will be a compression forces which are distributed equally, and the two springs will be compressed simultaneously. When eccentric loading is done, the compression forces act in the same side of the eccentric loading. On the other side, the springs will be stretched. That causes the tension forces. Similarly, if in the same scenario eccentric loading applied, if a tension band is applied prior to the eccentric loading, it resists the tension that would otherwise stretch the opposite spring, thus causes a uniform compression of both the spring. Which are the eccentrically loaded bones of the body? This includes tubular long bones like femur, humerus, radius, ulna, and other is patella. In general, the concave surface acts as the compression surface and the convex as the tension surface. For example, in femur, anterior cortex is convex, posterior cortex is concave. So concave surface acts for a compression surface and convex as the tension surface. Similarly, in patella, anterior cortex acts as a convex surface and the posterior surface acts as a concave. Concave for the compression, convex for the tension surface. Prerequisites for the tension band. Tension band must be applied on the tension surface of the bone, must be pre-stressed, must be strong to withstand tension load. Strong opposite bone cortex must be present to withstand dynamic compression loads. Joint movement must be encouraged to improve congruity and compression. The forces produced by the quadriceps on patellar fractures are significant and causes early fixation failure. In most of the cases, the stability necessary to achieve this is obtained using the tension band fixation. Here weight is applied on the compression side eccentrically. On the tensile side there is a tension band. So there is a uniform compression at the fracture site. This analogy, in the patellar fracture, the anterior surface is a tensile forces. When there is no tension band wiring, the distraction forces by the quadriceps distracts the tensile area. If a tension band wiring is done, the tensile forces which are acting opposite directions will be converted into compression forces. Anterior tension band converts tensile forces on the anterior aspect of the knee joint into compression forces at the joint line. In patella, an anterior figure of 8 wire loop acts as a tension band during flexion of knee. Multi-fragmentary patellar fractures cannot be fixed with tension band. Treatment for severely comminuted patellar fracture. Partial patellectomy, useful in treatment of a severely comminuted fracture of one pole that are not amenable to internal fixation. Total patellectomy done in a severely comminuted fractures involving whole patella. Patellectomy reduces quadriceps power by 30 to 40%. Proximal tibia fracture we will discuss under tibial tubercle avulsion, tibial spine avulsion, tibial plateau fracture. Extra-articular fracture, avulsion of tibial tubercle. This fracture is most often the result of a sudden quadriceps contraction. It may also be associated with knee dislocation, therefore check carefully for knee stability and associated neurovascular injuries. Conservative management with Ebony cast for undisplaced fracture. Displaced avulsion of tibial tubercle. Due to the pulling forces of patellar tendon, most of these fractures are displaced and need to be reduced. Reductions may be achieved by extending the knee and held with clamp. Fixation of this tibial tuberosity is achieved by lag screws in an anterior-posterior direction through the main fragment. Lag screws are reinforced with the tension band wire. Tibial spine avulsion. This injury represents an avulsion of anterior cruciate ligament. This intra-articular avulsion fracture is most often seen in younger patients. Arthroscopy or open reduction is done to fix tibial spine with the screws not compromising the articular cartilage or a ligament insertion site. Cannulated small fragment screws are preferred. Tibial plateau fracture occurs as a result of varus or valgus forces combined with axial loading. Femoral condyle exerts both shearing and compressive forces on tibial condyle. Bumper fracture or lateral condyle fracture occurs from medial directed forces onto the lateral aspect of knee, as happens when pedestrian is hit by a bumper of an automobile. Lateral condyle fractures occurs as a result of valgus forces. Similarly, medial condyle injuries occurs as a result of varus forces along with the axial loading over the knee. Schatzker's classification of a proximal tibial fracture. Type 1 is a split fracture of lateral tibial condyle without the depression. Type 2 is a split and a depressed fracture of a lateral tibial condyle. Type 3 is a isolated depressed fracture of the lateral tibial condyle. Type 4 is a medial condyle fracture. It may be split or depression. It is type 4. Type 5, bicondylar fracture with diaphysometaphyseal continuity. Type 6, it's a bicondylar fracture with diaphysometaphyseal dissociation. Management of tibial plateau fractures. For undisplaced fracture, treatment can be done using a traction and early mobilization in cast brace, provided knee does not exhibit more than 5 to 10 degree varus or valgus instability. Static traction can be done using distal tibial pin and Böhler Braun frame. After 6 weeks of traction can be removed and hinged knee brace is used. Patient should remain non-weight bearing for minimum of 12 weeks. This picture shows how to apply for the distal tibial skeletal traction, and this is a Böhler Braun splint which has 3 pulleys. Proximal pulley for a foot drop purpose, it will prevent the foot drop, and second pulley is for providing traction along the line of the femur, which can be used for a femur shaft fracture or distal femur fracture. Third pulley is for the proximal tibial fracture, where you can obtain the traction in line of the leg. Indications for surgery in tibial plateau fractures: instability of the knee more than 10 degree in extension, displaced split fracture, depressed fracture with more than 5 mm displacement of articular surface, open fractures. Approaches used to fix the tibial plateau are anterior-lateral approach, and second one is posterior-medial approach. Treatment for a Schatzker type 1, fixation with the CC screws or with the proximal tibial locking compression plate, PTLCP. These partial articular split fractures are intra-articular, therefore they need anatomical reduction and absolute stability. Treatment for Schatzker type 2, reduction of impacted fracture fragments followed by fixation with PTLCP. Here proximal screws act as raft screws. Rafts means foundation for the reduced fracture fragments. Plate osteosynthesis in the purely depressed fractures. The plate acts as a protection for the weakened fenestrated lateral cortex. Treatment for Schatzker type 3, similarly after anatomical reduction, fracture fixed with PTLCP. For Schatzker type 4, fixation done after reduction of medial condyle fracture with T-buttress plate, posterior medial plate, CC screws. Treatment for Schatzker type 5. Schatzker type 5 is a bicondylar fracture. So in order to avoid varus collapse on medial side, double plating is done, one on the lateral side, another one on the posterior medial aspect. As you see in the X-ray, it is a bicondylar type 5 fracture. This is the posterior medial plate and this is the lateral PTLCP plate. Treatment for Schatzker type 6. A joint bridging external fixator is fixed to the femur and the tibia, while the fracture zone is left virtually untouched. Provisional reduction is achieved with the distraction. After 4 to 6 weeks, once the fracture fragments consolidate or the wound heals, definitive fixation can be done like lateral PTLCP fixation or bicondylar PTLCP or posteromedial plate fixation. Now we will discuss the second type of injury, that is ligamentous injury of the knee, ACL injury. ACL is an intra-articular extrasynovial ligament. ACL consists of anteromedial and posterolateral bundles. These two bundles are said to have common femoral origin and separate tibial insertion. Length varies from 30 to 40 mm. Ligament is fan-shaped with narrow cross-section at center and wider insertion area. Tibial insertion is larger than the femoral insertion. Anteromedial bundle is attached more proximally on femoral condyles, whereas posterolateral bundle is attached distally and closer to the articular surface. Anteromedial and posterolateral bundles are almost parallel when the knee is in extension. At 90-degree flexion, origin of anteromedial bundle moves posterior-inferiorly and the origin of posterolateral bundle moves anterior-superiorly, which means both the bundles twist around each other. When considering the extension, both AM and PL bundles are parallel. When it is at a 90-degree flexion, both AM and the posterolateral bundles are twisted around each other. Anteromedial bundle is tighter in flexion, whereas posterolateral bundle is tighter in extension. Anteromedial bundle plays important role in maintaining stability of the knee, and it is the bundle that is reconstructed in ACL reconstruction. ACL is primary restraint to anterior translation of tibia and femur. ACL is secondary restraint to varus and valgus stresses internal and external rotations. PCL is primary restraint to posterior translation of tibia and femur. Unlike ACL, PCL has no effect on rotation of knee joint. ACL can withstand about 1730 to 2160 Newton before rupture. During activities of daily living, ACL is subjected to only 450 Newton. Mechanism of injury occurs as a result of non-contact injuries when player decelerates and stops suddenly to change direction. ACL would have increased tensile stress when knee is rotated, and if it is translated anteriorly by inappropriate firing of quadriceps. Tensile stress is further increased, leading to rupture. As you can see in this picture, the injury occurs when both the bones, femur and the tibia, are rotated in opposite direction under full body weight. Tension on ACL is more in extension of knee, and risk of injury is therefore increased when player lands from a jump with knee in full extended position. Female to male ratio is 3:1. This is because increased Q angle and narrow intercondylar notch have been thought to the contribution to ACL injury in females. Avulsion fractures seen with ACL injuries are McKeever fracture, avulsion of tibial attachment of ACL, second fracture, avulsion of lateral aspect of lateral tibial condyle produced by avulsion of capsular insertion. Clinical evaluation for ACL, anterior drawer test. Prerequisite: knee joint must be flexed up to 90 degree, should not be done during acute injury period. Method: patient lies supine on couch, knee is flexed to 90 degree and hip to 45 degree. Now the examiner sits on the forefoot of the patient and stabilizes it. Further, the examiner places both his hands around the proximal end of tibia, palpates the hamstring tendons with fingers of both hands, feels for its tightness, asks the patient to relax the hamstrings if it is found to be taut. Once hamstring is relaxed, examiner places both thumbs over the anterior joint line on either side of the patellar tendon. Purpose of thumb over the joint line is to feel normal step of 1 cm. Further, relative forward movement of the tibia with respect to the femoral condyle. Anteriorly directed force is given to the upper end of the tibia and relaxed. This step is repeated. If any anterior translation more than the normal step off, that is 1 to 2 mm beyond the normal step off, or if there is any soft end after the anterior translation, test is found to be positive. Latchman test. It is more sensitive test for ACL tear than the anterior drawer test and is more useful in acute injuries of knee where the knee cannot be flexed up to 90 degree. Method: the patient lies supine on couch with knee extended for right knee. Examiner holds the lower end of the thigh of the patient with his left hand and the upper end of the leg by right hand. Knee is gradually brought into 15-20 degree of flexion. Now the examiner stabilizes lower thigh with his left hand while right hand pulls the leg forward and then let loose. The leg is pulled forward couple of times to determine the end point feel, if it is soft or hard, and an estimation of drawer can be made out. Interpretation test is considered to be positive if anterior translation is more than 3 mm or the end point feel is soft. MRI is useful for differentiating normal ACL to torn ACL. First MRI showing a normal continuity in the ACL. Second MRI showing a discontinuity in the ACL in the form of edema. Hyperintense region is a torn region of ACL. Treatment: either by open ACL reconstruction with bone tendon bone graft using a patellar tendon, or arthroscopic ACL reconstruction with hamstring graft within 12 months of injury in presence of symptomatic instability of the knee. Post-op physiotherapy protocol includes 1 to 3 weeks, 90 degree knee flexion range and full extension, independent quadriceps contraction, walking without crutches by end of 3rd week. Between the 4th to 6th week, 120 degree knee flexion, normal gait cycle, staircase walking with good knee control. 7th to 10th week, full range of knee movements. PCL injury. PCL consists of two bundles, anterolateral bundle which is tight in flexion and 2 times larger than posteromedial bundle which is tight in extension. Mechanism of injury: blow to anterior tibia, dashboard injury or hyperflexion injury. Clinical evaluation of PCL injury. First test, gravity or Godfrey sign. Ask the patient to lie supine on couch and both the knees and hip are flexed to 90 degree with both heels at the same level. Examiner goes on side of the patient and tangentially watches alignment of tibia concerning the knee. Normally, if an imaginary line is drawn from a tibial shin upwards, it does not touch the patella or patella tendon. However, in a PCL tear, the tibia sags downwards. So, imaginary line that is drawn along the shin touches the patella tendon or patella. This is a positive test for PCL tear. Second test for PCL injury is posterior drawer test. In this test, both position of both examiner and patient is similar to that of the anterior drawer test. Only difference is examiner will push the proximal tibia posteriorly and again he will pull forward to see for the posterior translation. Normally, medial tibial plateau lies anterior to that of the femoral condyle. This is a normal. In grade 1, the medial tibial plateau lies just anterior to the femoral condyle, but there will be a posterior translation up to 10 mm, between 5 to 10 mm. In a grade 2, the medial tibial plateau will be along the line of the femoral condyle. This is a grade 2. In a grade 3 PCL injury, the posterior tibial translation will be more than 15 mm. That means the medial tibial plateau lies behind the femoral condyle. This is a grade 3 PCL injury. MRI helps in differentiating normal PCL to torn PCL. First MRI shows normal PCL which is taut. Second MRI shows the tortuous PCL which is a partial PCL tear, and another one showing a complete PCL tear which is also tortuous. Management of PCL injury. Arthroscopic transtibial reconstruction. Bone avulsion of PCL are fixed with screws. During rehabilitation, extension against the gravity is discouraged. Here A and B shows transtibial PCL reconstruction. C and D shows inlay technique of PCL repair. Another ligamentous injury of knee is posterolateral corner injuries. PLC structures includes popliteofibular ligament, biceps femoris tendon, iliotibial tract and lateral collateral ligament. Mechanism of injury: posterolateral directed blow to medial tibia with knee in full extension. Tests includes posterolateral drawer test similar to posterior drawer test. Posterior translation is observed in case of PLC injury. External rotation recurvatum test. To do external rotation recurvatum test, a patient lies supine while knee is kept in extension. Examiner lifts both the leg of the couch holding both the great toes together with hands and see for abnormal recurvatum at the knee. This is the abnormal recurvatum. External rotation of the leg. This will be the external rotation of leg. This indicates the posterolateral corner injury. Another test is dial test. Patient lies prone on couch. Both knees are flexed to 90 degree while plantar aspect of foot faces upward. Examiner holds the both ankles separately, gives an external rotation to the leg while watching for abnormal external rotation occurring at the level of knee as compared to the normal side. Index side with damage to PLC will have excess external rotation more than 10 degree as compared to the normal side. If external rotation is more in 30 degree only and not in 90 degree, it implies injured PLC and normal PCL. If external rotation is more in both 30 degree and 90 degree flexion, then both PCL and PLC are damaged. Treatment for PLC injury. Primary repair of PLC injury with IT tract, hamstring, biceps femoris tendon. If associated with PCL injury, simultaneous PCL repair should be done. Larson technique using pre-hamstring tendon with passage in the head of fibula and then in condylar popliteal fossa. Figure of 8 reconstruction is shown in this picture. Collateral ligament injury. Varus stress and opening of lateral joint at 30 degree of knee flexion with no laxity at 0 degree is indicative of isolated lateral collateral ligament injury. Isolated LCL injury treated non-operatively. Pain and instability with valgus stress at 30 degree of knee flexion but not in full extension is indicative of MCL injury. Isolated MCL injury treated non-operatively. Opening at 0 degree as well as in 30 degree of knee flexion indicates collateral injury and other injuries like PCL, ACL or PLC. Coming to last type of injury, meniscus injury. Meniscus tear classification: vertical, when extended longitudinally around the menisci, they are called bucket handle tear, horizontal tear, radial tear, flap type, and degenerative. Classification based on the location: red, fully within the vascular area, peripheral 3 mm, red to white at border of vascular area 3 to 5 mm from periphery, white within the avascular area 5 mm from the periphery. Clinical features and tests: only 30% of patients with meniscal injuries have true locking. Classically, patient will complain of sudden inability to fully extend knee. Extension can be completed by rotating and passively extending the knee. Effusion developing 6 to 12 hours after an injury typically follow meniscal tears. Tenderness on palpation of joint line is a Bragard sign. Pain with squatting may also be indicative of posterior arm meniscal tear. McMurray test. Patient lies supine on couch with knee extended. Patient is asked to flex their index knee as much as possible. Examiner must not forcibly flex the knee as most of the time patients have posterior third tear of the meniscus. They may experience severe pain if knee is forcibly flexed. For the left knee, examiner holds the left heel with the left hand, while the right hand of the examiner holds the distal end of the femur. Leg is externally rotated given a valgus stress with the left hand, where right hand acts like a fulcrum. Knee is gently extended. In case of medial meniscus tear, the patient will wince with the pain. Similarly, for lateral meniscus, patient lies supine in the similar posture with the knee extended. Patient is asked to flex the index knee as much as possible. And similarly, internal rotation given with the varus stress at the knee, and the knee is gently extended. In case of lateral meniscus tear, patient will wince with the pain. If the pain is felt in the posterior third arc, posterior third tear of the meniscus present. If pain is felt in middle third arc, middle third tear of meniscus is present. If pain is felt in the anterior third arc, anterior third tear of the meniscus will be present. Another test, Apley grinding test. It includes two parts: Apley's distraction test, Apley's compression test. This test differentiates between meniscus and the ligamentous tear. Patient lies prone on the couch. Affected knee is flexed to 90 degree. The patient's thigh is then anchored to the examination couch by examiner's knee. Then examiner holds the leg just below the ankle. In a distraction test, leg is distracted and rotated internally and externally. If the patient experiences pain, it is suggestive of ligamentous injury, like collateral or cruciate ligament injury, as the injured ligament is stretched in distraction. Whereas in Apley's compression test, the examiner applies downward force on the foot. The leg is rotated internally as well as externally. This relaxes the ligaments and compresses the menisci. If patient experiences pain, it is suggestive of meniscal tear, not the ligaments. Management. Among the investigations, MRI shows the meniscal tear. Here MRI shows hyperdense meniscal tear. This also showing the meniscal tear. It's a scopic view of a meniscal tear. For a conservative management, indications are longitudinal tear that are stable, partial tear that are stable, and shallow radial tears. Treatment for meniscal injury: arthroscopic repair among the young active individual who has an active longitudinal tear in peripheral vascular meniscus, and meniscectomy. Last thing is meniscal transplant for the symptomatic patient with rear meniscectomy.